Is Talk with Live right now on Main Street Media, Utah. Looking forward to being with you for the remainder of the next hour and a half or so. Right now, I will be, well, here momentarily, I'll be introducing my guests, but first, I just want to kind of get our show off to its normal beginning of the show start. Today is Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. If you're not watching this at roughly 4:26 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, that is, then I'm going to say thank you for coming back and watching our videos. We appreciate you doing that. This is Main Street Media, and I'm your host, John of Talk with John. Looking forward to being with you for about the next hour and a half to maybe even a little bit more than that. And let's also get the show going properly by I'm going to give out my show prayer and my show mantra. It's the prayer of my heart. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra. Where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. Now, folks, as I've said many times before, the bottom line is I don't necessarily live up to, and you could even say I'm a hypocrite when it comes to attempting to live up to the show prayer and the show mantra, but it's kind of where I esteem to be. Now I'm going to be bringing on my guest for the remainder of the next hour plus. And I will be introducing him in a minute, but I'm just making sure that I'm getting up some things loaded up, ready to go to introduce him, bringing up his bio. Now, I went directly from doing my standard day work stuff. So I like barely got going around 4 o'clock, and then we've had a few technical issues that we've been working on. And my producer is not here today, Dwayne Benson. Dwayne, we're going to miss you. Thank you for all you do to get this going. But let's go. Let's do this. I want to introduce my guest right now. His name is Michael Letts. Michael Letts with Invest USA. He has been a guest on my show on K Talk Radio. That's KBJA AM 1640 locally. Michael Letts is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA. It's a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. He has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt, hence his pro-police stance for his brothers and sisters in blue. We're so grateful that he's joining us today. So the last time he was on, we had Trent Staggs. Unfortunately, Trent Staggs did not become our lieutenant governor or make it to the primaries. But it was a great conversation with Michael Letts and a beginning conversation with Trent. We're so grateful to have Michael Letts back with us again. Michael, thanks for being here, my friend.
Always a privilege. Thank you, John, for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Okay, so normally we kind of get into the heavy parts of politics. And we will be definitely getting into the things that are going on with the Biden administration, different states. Also, we're going to touch on Iran. I want to get your thoughts as a former military guy and a number of friends that are still in that world. You pointed something out, was one of the first people that pointed out something to me with the helicopter that went down that took out the Iranian president, not Ukrainian president, the Iranian president. And maybe I just had a Freudian slip, or maybe I'm Nostradamus that guy might wind up having a helicopter incident one of these days. But
well, there's been definitely a conversation that he's been targeted, but so far they haven't been able to get that accomplished yet.
So, but first, I want to kind of start off with something that's on a little bit of a lighter note, but hopefully we can come to an understanding of you can help me understand why it happened, because when I first heard this story involving a police officer and a golfer, the number one golfer in the world, in fact, I was like, how in the world could this happen? I'm like, now what happened, kind of the narrative that I understand, is he was very close to he had a tee time that he had to make. He was very close to the golf course, basically right out in front of the golf course. There had been some type of accident. There probably, if I understand correctly, there actually was a fatal accident, and he attempted to kind of go around. He thought someone was wearing a vest, that it was just regular security, and he didn't necessarily listen to them or react very well. But it was a police officer. The police officer told him to stop moving, and attempted to detain him and basically pull him out of the window. He did wind up stepping out of the car, and the cop threw cuffs on him. Now, I'm going to play. I want to play both sides on this a little bit. First things first. I can understand if you think it's a security individual that you might go, I'm not paying attention to this guy. I've got to make my tea time. My understanding is those vehicles, when I've worked for in those type of scenarios for big events, the people that are out there out front driving traffic right in typically have a list of license plates. Cars are marked, specifically have like something in the window that may indicate that they are actual participants, as opposed to just the general public trying to come in. So then the other thought that went through my mind, so when I initially heard this, I was like, this cop's an idiot, and the police force totally screwed up on this. And what's going on? What are they doing arresting him? On the converse side, I was like, the bottom line is, all you have if someone's got if a cop stops me, unless like I've got someone dying in my back seat, or my wife, even if my like I had a wife in the back seat or a daughter in the back seat delivering a baby, I'd be like, listen, I'm in the middle, there's a baby delivery happening in the back, and I got to get to the hospital. Usually you explain something like that and things turn out a lot better. Bottom line is, he has guns and he can take your life. So that's something that you really need to keep in mind, and you need to do everything you can to diffuse the situation. So, but then there was another thought that came through my mind. They did have a fatal accident. They may have had to call in reinforcements. And so maybe this police officer was not part of the briefed security crew or something along those lines. So he didn't know what was going on. But I'm like, if there's someone that can talk us through this situation and what may have happened, it's Michael Letts, because initially, in my opinion, it's a really initially kind of a bad look on the cops, much more than it is on this individual golfer. It's a bad look on this, whatever police force it was. But let me pause there and say, Michael, do you know what happened? And if you don't, what do you think happened?
Well, we do know what happened, and let's make sure that we give the full story, the full side, and then you can make your own determination. First of all, yes, it was a professional golf tournament. Yes, he was a participant. He was not a spectator. Talking about the golfer, he was participating in the tournament itself. So yes, he did have, let's just say, time on his mind. He had to be there at a certain time, or he was expected to be there. Now, I want you to understand this from a layman's standpoint. Just like John, for you, if you need to be at the studio a certain time, yes, you're rushing, okay? But if there is a fatal accident where traffic is shut down, it is what it is. You're just going to have to tell the boss when you get there.
I
Traffic.
call ahead, and that was another thought that came through my mind. I call ahead and say, "Hey, folks, guess what? This has happened. I've been on my way to do my show before, and there has been a major accident that has been there for 2 hours. I'm trying to get to the show way ahead of time, but like the freeway shut down. So go
Right.
ahead, continue."
And you see, this is so close, because they were right within the vicinity of where it was happening, that if he'd have called in, they could have maybe sent a golf cart. The security guy parked his car, on the shoulder, on the side, or whatever, or had somebody else get in and be able to take him a different route. So you have to understand, from the golfer standpoint, his mindset is, this is a big tournament. I'm playing in the tournament. I need to be there yesterday, and I've got to move forward. He may, to his credit, he may or may not have known that there was a fatality. He obviously knew there was an accident, but he didn't know how bad it was. To your point, yes, additional emergency personnel brought out, not just law enforcement, but firefighters and EMS. When you have a fatality, you basically shut down the scene. Okay, was this officer assigned to security? No, he was part of a response team to handle the crisis situation. When you come upon an officer, a law enforcement officer, first of all, he's probably close by his vehicle. So there's blue lights flashing, okay? You pretty much can't miss. This is not a security car with the little yellow lights on top flashing. This is a law enforcement officer. His vest will say sheriff, police, etc. So you know who you're dealing with. Now, when he comes upon the scene, the officer is doing what he feels is necessary to keep traffic controlled. Why is that so important? I don't know where the stage was at that time, but ambulance could have been en route. They could have already loaded, trying to get the ambulance out. His job as a first responder, as a sheriff, as a police law enforcement, to control the scene, okay, to make sure that that functions the way it's supposed to. We can get these people the help they need, or get them in the hospital where they need to be. So you have that in mind. He's trying to get. He has the only thing he has in his mind is getting there on time. The law enforcement officer, only he has in his mind is controlling the scene. Now, from what the information is, here's a couple of negatives on law enforcement. Nothing he did intentionally, but his camera did not activate, okay, as it should have. So, unfortunately, we do not have a video of what I'm fixing to tell you. This is all in the report. What happens is that he then stops traffic, and to be able to make sure that the units can coming in, the firefighters and the EMS have that proper access, enough room to get the vehicles in and out to transport. Uh, the golfer, we'll just call, we won't use names, we use their profession. The golfer insists that he did not understand what the sheriff or what the deputy was trying to insinuate. You know, the signals are pretty clear. When you stick up your hand to show it, that means stop. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But his mind, remember, is in a different location. He's trying to get there. He's saying he's not
His mind
understanding.
is, I'm a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
Everybody
I'm a
should
big
know
deal.
who I am. They
You
should
don't
have
need to
a picture
stop
of
me. I'm
me.
fixing to be on TV. I'm fixing to be in the tournament. Stop the next guy. So the officer, still doing his job to maintain control, gets a little more insistent. Okay. The guy gets a little more insistent. He runs over his foot. Okay. The officer was actually transported by ambulance to check him out for injuries. Now he's going to be fine, bruised, etc., but he's going to be fine. So, John, put yourself in that situation. You're trying to maintain. That's what your job is to maintain control of the scene. You've got a person who's acting like he doesn't understand. The signals are not complicated, okay? So the impression is you're not wanting to understand. All right. Now you're going to take the frustration a little further and run over the guy's foot to kind of send the message that I'm getting around you. Well, now he's calling in for backup, okay? Because now we think we have a hostile situation here. And what is the officer going to do? He's going to respond as a human. You want to run over my foot? Now you've done drawn the line. I'm going to get the window down and I'm going to jerk you out if that's what it means. If you will refuse, and of course, what is the golfer's position? I can't act like now I'm understanding you because that blows the whole cover. So he has to continue the charade about what do you ask? I don't understand. It makes the officer more frustrated. Let me make it very clear. We won't talk anymore. I will show you what I mean about how we're going to solve this situation. Okay. And that's what happened. Now, where does it stand now? The hearing was supposed to be in a couple weeks. The courts have postponed it. They have not given a date as to when it's been postponed because they're trying to figure out a resolution to the matter. Are the charges going to be dropped? Possibly. Did he intentionally try to assault the officer? Not well. You can't never know what somebody's intent is. But here's what makes it difficult for law enforcement. If the body cam wasn't on, and there's no footage. Then he says, "I put up my hand to stop." No, he never did do that. And so it's a he said, she said. It makes it more complicated. It's obviously got a lot of people interested in the story. probably the easiest thing to do is just figure out a way that they part ways and be done with it. But to criticize the law enforcement standpoint, he was there for a particular reason, and that was to make sure he secured the scene. You had a tragedy, you had a death, you had to make sure the first responders could access, do their job, and be able to get in and out. He was doing his job.
Okay, so there is a reason why I brought this up more than just a fun story to poke at someone. Had that been an African American or minority
Golfer or law enforcement officer?
golfer or
It would have
individual,
really, it would have been a whole lot. It would have been worse. Yes.
it would have been a whole different story. My point is, this was a white golfer who happens to be a privileged white person, and the cops, you mess with them, you mess with the bull, you're going to get the horns.
Correct.
Okay, and so my point is, uh, I hear many times, well, you never hear these stories about white people because no one cares. It happens all the time. This one people happen to actually care a little bit about because it was someone well known. Now, my guess is, had that been Tiger Woods that was in the vehicle, right?
Correct.
Probably the officer would have noticed who it was and handled it differently, even with the golfer. Hey, this is Tiger Woods, right? I'm going to figure, but there, it's just some Joe Schmuckatelli that I don't care about when it comes to golfing.
Right.
Had it been Larry Bird in the car in his prime, he would have been like, okay, we'll figure out a way to get this guy around guy around, right? My point is, this happens all the time in the United States. There are plenty of interactions between white people of all races and police. The police, all you have to do in general, I find, I've been pulled over a time or two for speeding. I've been pulled over in the last 5 years. I've been pulled over a couple of times. Every single time, I don't get a ticket for speeding. Why? Because I kill that cop with kindness. I am so sorry, officer. I am so sorry, deputy. That I have invaded on your time in your precinct. Yes, it's totally my fault. I apologize, and this is completely on me. You're totally in your jurisdiction. Your jurisdictional responsibility to let me have it. Throw the book at me, and it's like every single time they're like, just don't do it again. And I kill that cop with kindness. He's going to think I'm his best friend. If you treat police officers in general like that, you're going to. I know Jason Whitlock talks about this all the time too. Jason Whitlock is an African American, used to be a reporter. Now he has a radio show commentary, or has a TV show on the Blaze, does commentary, and he talks about this all the time. He says, I am a horrendous speeder, and I kill that cop with kindness when they come to the window. Hey, I am sorry that I am, causing you to take time out of your day to deal with a schmuck like me. And it works.
Well, let's go back on this particular situation. You have two dynamics here. I understand, talk about the golfer. I understand, hey, I'm supposed to be in this tournament. This is a big deal. You understand we need to get me there. I get his antsiness, okay? I also get from the law enforcement standpoint, it's not my job to care about who you are. My job is to secure the scene. Now, how do you get those two to work together? You have to have patience on both sides. First of all, the golfer, if I threw up my hand to stop, that's what I meant. Okay, you stop. Now, roll down your window, give it a second for me to make sure that I'm doing my job to secure the scene. Then, if you could say, excuse me, sir, I am, supposed to be a part of the participants. I'm supposed to just right down the street. Is there any other way? He would have more than likely said, give it a minute, hold on, let me secure the scene. We'll figure something out. But when you act like I don't understand because I'm going to push my way on you, I have no patience. I need to get through now. Now you've got a train wreck. You got two trains headed in the opposite direction, and it's not going to end up to be a good scene.
Well, let me put it this way. Bottom line is, I want law enforcement to win that. He's not,
Right.
that golfer is not supposed to be above the law.
And and now I'm giving the personal side to this story. Law enforcement recognizes that, but they also recognize that they have a duty to try to make people at ease, to try to work with the community. So, really, that having been said, most cops, as you alluded to, depending on how you handle them, will treat you the same way. I mean, whether you're a big shot, whether you're not, if you're asking in a humble, hey, here's my situation. I mean, if there's nothing you can do, nothing you can do. But I'm supposed to be there. Is there anything? Most of them will say, okay, as long as you're patient, hold on just a second. Let me see what I can do.
And,
But
and, and
when you bowl your way into like a bull in a China cob, you're gonna get hit with a bull right back.
I want that bull to give you the horns. And,
Right.
and and here's the reason why. I am not. I am. While I'm pro police, I'm pro law enforcement in general. I do know that there's some bad apples out there. I do know there's some guys big for their britches. Um, I used to hang around a bunch of cops, and I knew a couple of them that were total jerks and did some really jerk face things. Um, and they're human just like the rest of us, and there's some guys with there's some guys that have really big egos, and I firmly believe, and this is probably less than 1%, but there's in law enforcement there are some. The only difference between the bad guys and the law enforcement individual is the law enforcement guy has the badge, the Vic
Right.
Mackeys of the, oh, what was that show, Shield. I
Hmm.
believe that those guys exist.
They do.
But even when you kill, and even when, but the bottom line is, if you when you interact with them, they've got a gun, they can pull the trigger, and you've got to prove the reason why they don't need to pull a trigger, why they don't need to pull a gun, and why they should treat you with dignity. And in general, listen, like I said, when I get pulled over by a police officer, I say, you know what, I'm sorry for bothering you today. It's totally my fault. You know that goes a long way.
Well, again, back on kind of wrapping this conclusion up. You raised and gave some very poignant and information that people need to be aware of. You set the tone immediately. Okay. So using this incident, when I throw up my hand and say, stop, if you obey me immediately with a smile, okay, you'll get my attention again in a matter of seconds. 10, 20, 30 seconds is not going to make the difference, for you, whether you got there or missed the whole event. You set the tone will be responsive back. But at the same time, you give me a dirty look and, kind of scoff and hit on the horn and, try to inch up a little bit, kind of like, I got something to tell you. Then don't be surprised when you put them in a different mindset. And once they're in that mindset, you've lost the battle. You're in trouble now.
Yeah,
If you're going to do that, you just might as well figure you're going to go to the back of the line. And if you want to challenge it, you're going to go to jail,
yeah.
which is what happened in this particular situation.
I know that he was put in cuffs. I believe he was put in the cruiser. I don't think he ever went. I don't know if he ever went to jail.
He was transported, and
Oh,
he was brought back shortly thereafter. But yes,
that's awesome. That's
you
awesome.
know,
Frankly, that's awesome.
once he got down and once the chief, understood the situation and understood that the camera wasn't rolling, he knew where this was headed. It was kind of like, let's not make things any worse on either side. This is a minor offense. Here's the tickets. We will let the court decide, not us, and take him on back. We'll figure it out later. Now, how does
Yeah,
it work from here? The courts can't do anything if the officers are not going to press charges. So yes, they've issued a ticket, but you remember the ticket doesn't mean anything until you take it to court and an officer breaks it before a judge and says we're pressing charges. The officer can rip that ticket up at any point in time he wants to.
okay. Well, let's get to some stories that are happening now. Let's get to a story from yesterday. Justice prevails in Texas as Governor Greg Abbott pardons a man sentenced for murder of a Black Lives Matter protester. Um, Now, this gentleman, if I remember correctly, the protester actually leveled a firearm at the at this guy, and if I remember correctly, he was just in his vehicle passing through. The the
Here's what happened.
protester
Yeah.
brought his firearm to bear, and the guy went, "You're pulling a firearm on me. I happen to be packing. I'm shooting because I don't know what you've just done lethal force for no reason." And
Well, right, exactly.
and then if was this in the was okay, so then the next thing was I want to believe where he was held accountable. I'm trying to find if it's saying in the story real quick. I want to say it was in either Austin or Houston. So it was in a very Democrat heavy area, and they wanted to make uh, this guy looked bad. He was a white guy that shot and killed the other individual. So they wanted to do everything they could to bring quote unquote in I'm going to say injustice to bear on this individual.
Well, and here's what happened in that particular situation. It's in Austin, so yes, it is a Democratic controlled city. There was a rally. Now remember, that's their term, not mine. I call it a riot. They call it a rally. Black Lives Matter. They had illegally shut down the streets. Okay, they don't have any right to block your access on a public road. Okay, I know they think they do, but there is no law anywhere in the country on any state that gives you the right to do that. You are in the wrong. You are violating the law when you do that. You should be arrested and charged anywhere in the country. They had a line of Black Lives Matters blocking the street. When he turned to go on the street, he didn't realize that. Talking about it was a white individual, and it was a white Black Lives Matter individual, believe it or not. So he turns, he starts going down the street. They've got it blocked. He's pulling in. They're all coming around his car. You know, what are you doing on? Can't you tell? You know, we're blocking the street. This particular individual had an AK-47 draped over his shoulder. Instead of just having the rifle and leaving it on his side, hanging in a downward position, non-threatening position, he begins to pound on the window and raises it and points the barrel at the guy. Now, remember, an AK-47 is going to cut right through that window. I mean, it's not
Oh
even going
yeah.
to act like it's even there. So he
Well,
felt
it'll go through
threat.
a 22 bullet will go through a window and kill someone.
Oh, exactly. But an AK-47. Here's the interesting thing. Had he shot that AK-47, it would have gone through the window, gone through the guy, gone through the underwindow, and probably taken out two or three people on the other side of the car.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he raised it. He points. So the defendant, who was an Army sergeant, felt threatened. He felt like his life. I mean, if you're not trying to threaten me, if you're just trying to intimidate me, then you just leave the rifle there, kind of like, hey, you see what I've got? You better listen to what I'm saying. But when you raise it and point the barrel, that is a clear intent that my life is definitely could be in danger. So he did what Texas law allows, and that is Texas has one of the stringent right to defense laws. Stand your ground is what we call it. You feel like your life is threatened. Of course, you have to define it. I can't just think it's threatened because I'm giving you a dirty look. But if you think legitimately that your life is threatened, you have the right to defend yourself under Texas law. He felt like, and justifiably so, with the barrel of an AK-47 facing him in the face, he drew the sidearm he had laying next to him, in the console, and fired, and killed the guy. And
And for me, that is a clear, justified shooting.
well, here's what's interesting: when law enforcement reviewed the case, they under Texas law, they refused to indict. Okay, refused to arrest, and thought that he had acted within Texas law. The liberal DA disagreed and decided that he would seek an indictment for manslaughter at best. And because obviously it wasn't premeditated, I mean, he didn't know the guy was going to be there, etc. And because of it being a Democratic and a liberal city, and because it was Black Lives Matter, in my opinion, he got a conviction. And so he was facing 20 years and had actually been incarcerated and taken to jail. And his attorneys petitioned the governor that it was a wrongful conviction. The governor, under their law in Texas, the governor doesn't make the decision to begin with. He has a review commission, same as parole commission. They looked at it, they reviewed the facts, they determined that he had operated within the law of stand your ground, the stand your ground law in Texas, and recommended that the governor pardon him It was a state matter. He wasn't charged federally or anything. He was only charged with the state. And so he received a full pardon and he's out. Case closed. Now, there's, there
I
are
almost wonder if
repercussions.
Biden's going to go after this guy.
That's why I said this just happened. And what is a typical reaction that the feds do? Well, we don't care what the state does. You violated this person's federal civil rights laws, and we're going to bring the Department of Justice and the Bureau, et cetera, to issue federal indictments against you and try to have you convicted. Which, sadly, when you're in a Democratic controlled county, there's very good possibility they could do that.
Um,
Now we have a new administration here shortly that will never get far enough down the road for anything to happen. But you keep what we got now, I wouldn't be surprised at all if what you just said becomes reality.
yeah, I'm concerned for this guy that it actually hasn't come to an end. So let me put it this way: most individuals that you know, especially within law enforcement, had everything you just explained. What would have they have done in their personal vehicles? In their
We've done the
personal
same thing.
vehicles, you would have done the same thing.
Here's the key component that I want to make sure your listeners understand. Here's the key component of this entire story. You walk up to me, you're carrying, you got a AK-47 strapped across the front, an AR-15, whatever you want to call it. It's carrying the way the military will instruct you to do, downward point. It's non-threatening. I mean, I've got it, but it's not being used in a threatening manner. I have no right, even if you're cussing me and I'm cussing you, and we're, steam's coming out of both ears. I have no right to do anything else. You raise it so that you put it in an aggressive manner, so that the barrel is pointed to me. It's not pointed at a tree. It's pointed at me, and it will only take you a second to pull that trigger. Now you've crossed the line. Now you have aggressively put my life in danger, and I have every right to defend myself. Any cop across the country will tell you that.
Okay. I think there's a couple other components here too. Is that car was surrounded by other people as well. They stopped him
Right.
and impeded him from proceeding forward. And I don't know there may be different laws in different states, but there are laws that, like, if someone comes to stop you in traffic and you're afraid for your life and you're in your a car, you just mow them over. You're legally within your rights to just proceed forward,
Correct.
because they are actually breaking the law by stopping traffic and being out in traffic.
Well, and what the
There's
definition
almost
again for
go ahead.
that to work, the definition for that to work, you're surrounding my car. Okay, I just can't run over you. I can kind of push forward unless I feel an imminent threat to my life. Well, in this particular sense, the guy's pointing an AK-47. I mean, there's definitely a threat. Or these people that are approaching my car, banging on it, hitting it. I can't scan 20 people in one shot and see whether any of them are armed, unarmed, knives, etc. You've shown aggressive intent. I have the right to defend myself. You're just standing there. You see them, what they do in the road all the time. They're just sitting there, with their hands behind their back. I roll over you as much as I want to do that, then I'm gonna get charged with manslaughter.
Okay, so John, you're being a little hyperbolic. What you're talking about never happens, and you're way overstating the situation. You just don't like Black Lives Matter protests that happen, which is true. But I want to say it was just either earlier this month or last month, that at these protests on a college, and I want to say it was in Illinois. I could be wrong, but a kid in a white Honda turned the wrong road. People started surrounding his car. If I remember correctly, they even broke out his glass. It was a white Honda. The kid wound up stopping his car and took off running the other way. Guess what they did? The
They
mob
chased him down.
ran him down and beat him almost to death.
Correct. And that's not the only story though. That happens. It's happened quite often.
And in my opinion, in that situation, we need to start coming up with some new laws that say you're doing that type of stuff. It is perfectly legal for the driver of the vehicle to just continue to if the driver of the car runs someone over, that is that not only they can't be charged. I mean, I and here's the thing, John. Why even mention that type of thing? This can be. I think the summer of love that we saw back in 2020, we
Right.
may if the Democrats are threatening if Trump gets put into office that they're going to everything that they have had happened back then, it's only going to be much worse now, coming
Oh,
up
there's
in the
no
fall.
question. There's no question that's where it's headed. But the key, let me make sure, because I think this is a very important issue that we talk about on your show. Make sure everyone clearly understands one very crucial factor in any state, even in a liberal state. The key has to be probable or substantiated cause that a reasonable person would assume that there is a threat on your life. So let's go back to the three scenarios we talked about. You're standing there with a weapon. I'm uncomfortable, but you haven't made a threat to me. Okay. So be careful how you respond. You're pointing again at me, all bets off. You're blocking my ability, but you're just standing there with your hands behind your back. I can kind of push forward a little bit, but I've got to be careful if I knock you down and run over you, then I'm going to get charged with involuntary manslaughter. However, if you've got a crowd coming around you and they got sticks, I'm not even talking about, it didn't have to be bats, sticks, their fists, they're throwing rocks, they're pounding on you, they're doing property destruction to your vehicle, which shows aggressive intent, you have every right to stand your ground. And that
Especially
means
soon,
get out of there, you hit the gas, and I hate to run over you, but if you're in the way, you were just in a stupid place.
and the bottom line is, at that point in time, as soon as one of those windows break, you're implying threat. You're
No
you're
question.
implying harm.
But even if it doesn't break, the fact that you are aggressively pursuing me shows intent for bodily harm. I have the right to stand my ground. But just that's why I want people, because here's what happens in talking about, we're giving you both sides of the story. If you're not used to it, it's a scary situation. All these people all standing around and they panic, grab the steering wheel and slam on the gas and run three or four of them over. And then they wonder why they get charged because they can't show. And you have all these witnesses. Oh, they weren't doing anything. They were just standing there. Then you've got a tough row ahead. But when they're aggressively, and there's video cam, usually there are TV crews out by then, et cetera, and they're filming and seeing aggressive nature on these people, then you have every right to defend yourself.
Okay.
Especially in this circumstance when the guy pulls an AK-47 and points it to your head. I mean,
Yes.
that's not a good scenario.
Yeah. That has gone. That the individual that pointed the firearm just made it go south.
Correct.
All right. So let's get to another topic. Actually, before we do, I want to go to the downing of the Iranian helicopter. Now, for my audience, for the K Talk audience, a number of people know that you have contacts within the CIA and within the FBI and so forth. You have people that you've talked to there. Um, so yesterday, all we knew is that the helicopter had gone down right before you went on air with me. I want to say within an hour or two of going on air, we found out that he had actually died in the police
Correct.
in the crash. This
Well,
being
actually, when you and I went on air, it was not public knowledge that he had died, but I told you he had passed away.
okay. So Michael Lett's helping us out. So he had passed away. And you shared that's what I love about having Michael Letts. So he had passed away. We found that out, but something we knew that there was the weather was not great, and they were flying around in the mountains. They were in the helicopters in the mountains, and I heard a report that he was they were above 10,000 feet.
Correct.
Okay, so for for those of you that don't fly rotowing, most of us just get in a plane, have a pilot take off and take off for us and go somewhere. A fixed wing plane, you can get up to, especially if you get to 15, 16,000 feet, especially when you get above 18,000 feet, you're out of the worst part of the weather.
Correct.
But A helicopter, it starts its limit. It doesn't really like being above about 8,000 feet. When it hits 10,000, it's real uncomfortable. Anything above 10,000 feet, it is not doing well at all, and it's borderline out of control. In fact, if I know helicopter pilots, if it gets above 30 degrees wind, they're like, this helicopter is not leaving the ground for any reason.
Correct.
So, um, foggy conditions, if I understand correctly, it was really blowing around. Another thing that Michael Letts told me is, John, there are the governments have the ability to make these storms really interesting. Come to find out, there's been a couple people that on YouTube that tried to do the weather for that day, and the whole 24-hour period on the 19th when he went down disappeared. So it goes May. It shows on the screen May 18th, 2024. It hits midnight where May 19th should have started. Gone. Then it's the next day. Then it's the following day, the 20th. So like the whole 24 hours has been gotten rid of. Kind of makes me wonder. And then I talked to an individual by the name of David Pine. He's former military guy as well. He said, John, there's a possibility that the Iranians within themselves, the president, the I forget the name of the so the Iranian president is like number three in the country for control of the country, but the
Well,
Ayatollah or whatever it
yeah, you
is.
have your Ayatollah first, and you have the deputy, and then you have the president, the vice president, the
So
minister of defense, etc.
the Ayatollah's son is kind of the heir apparent, and
That's
there are
correct.
those that are saying this could be the Ayatollah son taking out because and it was an interesting stacked, in that helicopter was the president, it was the foreign minister, and I think there was some other high
Minister
level
of defense.
minister of defense. Um,
Mhm.
all those individuals were taken out in one helicopter. So there are people that have said anywhere from the Israelis to possibly the CIA to the MI6, all of them, said that there's a possibility it could be any one of those. When you throw in the weather thing, I'm like, I could totally see the CIA, and I'm just using the CIA. I'm not saying the CIA, but for instance, it could be the CIA. Hey, we'll help you take this guy out to the son of the Ayatollah. But okay, those are just some interesting things that are floating around, things that have been going on in my mind. The conspiracy theory, John, that just loves that stuff.
Well, let's talk about what's not conspiracy. Okay,
Okay,
just
let's talk about
put
facts. What we
your
know.
mind at ease. We'll work our way backwards. First, let's talk about look at Iran. I mean, of course, Iran is the number one exporter of terrorism. They couldn't do much for years because they were broke under Trump. He froze all their assets. Biden came in and gave them their assets back and probably added a couple extra dollars on top of it. I mean, we've talked about that in your show, on your other shows, your other radio shows, that oftentimes this foreign aid has a way of growing because some of it comes back to the people that are pushing it. But that's a whole nother story. So you've got Iran who now has flush with cash, are able to move forward with exporting terrorism the way they want to. Why do they export terrorism? Because their whole agenda is one thing, and that is to create a caliphate for the entire world. They want either you're a Muslim, either you're an Islamic jihadist, or you don't have the right to exist. And of course, the biggest opponents of that in their mind is Israel, and the United States is second. So you have that faction, and that faction is running around. That is the Ayatollah, his son, and others. You have a larger faction inside Iran that say, you know what, the rest of the world doesn't really care for that. We're isolated. Yes, we got some cash now because of Biden, but it looks like Biden's not going to be there very long. We're probably going to get isolated again. Things are going to get rough in Iran. We need a change in government. And there is a faction. It is known that there are underlying rumbles of a revolution on the horizon for the Iranian people to liberate themselves from this enslavement by this extremist government, Islamic government. So you've got your top people, the Ayatollahs, knowing there's that going on. How do you rally the people instead of coming after you to support you, even though they don't like you? You find a common enemy. Okay. Now they've got a common enemy, Israel and the United States. So you see what they did. Now we're working our way back. They went after Israel. They supported Hamas. Hamas attacked Israel. Iran rejoiced. Even the people that don't like the regime, that are Iranians that are living there, rally behind this. We're slaying the great Satan. And so Iran even got to the point, you remember they launched missiles themselves on Israel. Israel retaliated. It was this very small, limited retaliation. But they retaliated nonetheless. And you remember when Israel does a small retaliation, it's only sending you a warning shot. What it's telling you is that we have some great packages in store for you. Here's the first of ones to come. And so you have all that said, the CIA and our intelligence agencies have always meddled sometimes when they're not supposed to in foreign affairs, especially when it comes to regimes with Iran. So you
And
had,
one of their favorite way to take people out has been aircrafts going down. I
sure.
mean, well, hypothetically speaking, that is.
Well, in this particular situation, so you have to have intelligence sources because they don't put a full page ad in the New York Times. Hey, the Iranian government and its top leaders will be in the following locations. Please come by and shake their hand. So the intelligence was gathered. We knew that there was a excursion planned in a particular area. It's in a mountainous region. So back on your question that you raised about the altitude, it's not typically that unusual to go that high in a helicopter when you're in a mountainous region, especially because you understand if you're only a couple hundred feet up above a high point region, that maybe totally you're actually six, seven
Right.
thousand feet above. So you elevate. Now, what's interesting is the weather was suddenly deleted. As to what the why would it have been deleted? What you may have found in those figures is the weather was perfectly clear and flyable. Okay, suddenly you get the takeoff from the party from the helicopter, and an unexpected storm just rolls in, just from nowhere. You immediately move to try to get above it, but this storm is bigger than what the helicopter is able to get above, and catastrophe occurs shortly thereafter. So now you've got a situation to where you've got uh, something accomplished for the Ayatollah. Their moderates have now been removed. You have something that they can rally the Iranian people around. This didn't just happen. It has the markings of Israel at best, America and Israel at worst. And, we need to all unite as a people to go after the great evils of the world. So it's a pretty good move for them, foreign policy wise. And that's kind of where we're at this moment.
Okay. Do you think what likely? So I'm going to ask you to do this. Play the percentages game, and I hope I'm not being too unfair to you. But what percentage would you put this? And I'm going to give you, these are the scenarios in my mind that I think are likely. Aircraft going down due to just a, an no external act, just aircraft goes down because of malfunction, including weather.
Well, let's take it one at a time. Okay.
Okay, so
Here's what we're go-
I'm gonna mention them one at a time, and then I want to know what you think is
Yes.
most
On
likely.
on the first one, that's definitely a factor
Okay.
because they have a poor record of maintaining their aircraft. Most of it's because their aircraft is left over from either acquired from the U.S., which they don't get parts for, or Russian from Afghanistan. So if you're supposed to just change a gear every 5,000 miles just to change it, they just change it till it breaks. Well, when it
Right.
breaks, guess what? If you're in the air,
And it breaks,
it
you
can't
got
work.
problems.
Yeah, so there's some merit to that. Now, it's exactly did it break this time or not? But no, there's definitely some concern that they don't maintain the aircraft correctly. It makes it easier to get rid of the aircraft, by the way, if that's their mo.
Yeah. So there's that. Then another one is that it's Israelis. You could say Israelis, and if it's the CIA, it's done with the Israelis' blessing.
Well,
Um,
on that one, it would never be just the CIA. It would be the intelligence community of those parties that are, sharing that
right.
common objective.
And then the internal machinations of Iran itself, someone trying to gain power over someone else. Um, Now, there's a very good chance this last one also involves the two or
See, that's the
three,
thing.
right?
Everyone you just raised is they're all part of the puzzle. They all intertwine together.
So, what do you think is what percentage would you put it at just due to uh, aircraft and weather?
No, that's if that were the case, there'd be no deletion of the aircraft of the weather data. There would be a when you're having mechanical difficulties. First of all, you're not going up. Okay, you're not gaining altitude. If the thing starts shaking, your first thing you do is you lower the altitude and try to get down as close as you can, realizing that you may have a gear fixing to snap that may set you down quicker than what you wanted to be. So you don't go the opposite direction. So that doesn't work.
So then the West versus internal machinations.
Well, let's talk about again what we were talking about a minute ago. The other thing to add in there is that for a storm like that size to come up that fast without prior indication would be highly unusual for it to occur naturally. Okay. So that then leads you into the second thing. So if there are some agencies that are providing intel that are helping manipulate some things, is it because they just want to change the regime? Is it because they want to stir the pot and create another conflict? All of that plays in because when you take a look at Biden's administration, his numbers are in the hole. We all know that. Okay. And quite frankly, if you're trying to advise the president as to how to keep his position, everything they've done so far didn't work, did it? Including trying to lock up Trump. What are the things left to play? It is interesting how American people respond when there is a national crisis. Sometimes we overlook local issues and rally to come together as a people behind whatever happens to be the leadership at the time. You see that in World War II. You see that in, now remember, it's got to be something that we can agree upon. No, half the country didn't like Vietnam. A lot of the country didn't like Afghanistan. But in World War II, we were attacked. What did we do? We didn't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, or a Libertarian, make no difference. We were Americans, and we rallied. We supported our leadership to, strike back. Same situation here. If there is a incident or a terrorist attack on American soil, what would that do? It would allow an administration to come back and say, we're under attack on the American soil. You may not like me, that's fine, but we're going to rally together and we're going to keep America strong. Way, of course, you don't believe a word he says, but we're going to keep America defended. Is what his position would be, and that would go a long way. He can even go to the point, not that it would occur, but you can declare martial law, especially if it happens on American soil. You can even try to move to suspend elections for an indefinite period of time if you have to. So now you've given the other side a great purpose because you remember if they're trying to say that there were outside influences that brought down and killed their leaders, that gives them a cause to which is closely being monitored as we speak because we know we have terrorists from their organizations in America at the moment to say, hey, we've been wondering about when we were going to start showing ourselves. Now's a good time. They just killed our leaders. Let's create some havoc over there. So there's a lot factor and a lot at play here.
I want you to. I don't know if you've heard anything about this. This is a news story that someone texted me. Um, Head of Iranian intelligence service, uh, in the Lorsata province in Iran, has been assassinated. And this came after today, and this happened after the chief of Iranian National Police was also assassinated today. Have you heard anything about those stories?
I have. The credibility is being vetted as we speak.
Okay. So
But
can't
now, if you take that, let's just say that it is vetted and it proves to be accurate. You remember those are the elements that are part of the Ayatollah who are trying to do a crackdown on what they view as the simmerings of a revolution. So now you have even more validity that somebody is trying to help somebody um, create a real stink.
so this is probably an internal civil. If you take in the helicopter and then these two scenarios, most likely you think this is an internal scenario, correct?
Yes, but it still has applications externally. And here's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
This is great. This is great news for Israel.
Oh yeah.
Uh, for America, you know, we shouldn't have any role, but we do. And quite frankly, if you have an administration that's willing to do anything it needs to keep in power, why not piss off your enemy? Try to get them to do something here to give you a boost, especially if you feel like right now you're out the door.
Well, there's two ways of looking at this. The CIA, if there's an internal battle going on in Iran for at least short period of time, you don't have to deal with them coming after you to battle you.
Correct.
And that I mean I would wrap in Iran, I'd wrap in the United States, and whatever else you want to wrap in. The United States, someone comes to the CIA, comes to the Mossad, comes to MI6, uh, the 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 Ayatollah's son comes and says, "Hey, I want to gain power." There's a good chance that, yeah, of course they're going to help. Um, I kind of so all these scenarios. Could it be just outside Western influence wrapping everything up and doing everything on their own? It's possible. My guess is these three events don't
They all
happen within such a short period of time in a vacuum.
they all interplay. So how do you bring this to a conclusion? What do you want people to gather out of this? From my perspective, we're at a very critical point from this standpoint. If it could just be contained in Iran, yes, we will be affected by it, but to a very small degree. If Iran is able to convince its people that there is a attack on its sovereignty by Israel and slash the United States of America and call for retaliation on American soil, it could be tough.
And
And that's what we're hearing. That we're monitoring closely to see what the chatter, for lack of a better word, is.
and my understanding is that seems to be the chatter that's happening in the Middle East, in Iran, is this is the West stirring these events up.
Well, it's kind of what we just said from both standpoints. If you're here in America and you're the leader, and it doesn't look like people want you, like they want to get rid of you, you need to find a rallying point to pull the people together. You can't do it on your record because people are really pissed off with that. You can't go after your opponent because that doesn't seem to be working. So find something else. Get a terrorist attack across the country and rally the people to help fight terrorism on American soil. If you are Iran and you have dissonant from, we'll say, moderates who not just one or two, but appear to be getting a groundswell of a possible rebellion, you got to buy yourself some time to get control. How do you do that? Same principle. Look at here. We have this great common enemy that has now killed our beloved leaders, and we're going to raise Cain. However they can raise Cain, and we need all of you to get behind the organization and help us show the sovereignty of our motherland. So on either side, you see what you got. How does that affect you and I? It's not good either way.
I concur. That's what I would say this boils down to. And then on top of that, we have Israel that's talking about bringing millions of people over here to the United States. They're building that pier in Gaza, and they want to flood America with all these Palestinians. That
You know
scares
what's sad about that situation, John, is this administration wants to bring in over a million point two to a million point five Gazians as refugees. Now, let me tell you how that works so that our audience clearly understands. When you're a refugee, I don't have to go through 6 months worth of background checks. I don't have to show that I have no connection to terrorist organizations. I just show I live in Gaza and I want out. Good enough. Get on the plane. So you're not going to be able to vet any of these 1.5 million people that are coming. Now, here's what's interesting. You have Egypt, you have Jordan, you have Syria, all who have more, and there are others along the borders who have an easy capacity to assume a portion of each one of those and outside help not be needed. What has each one of those states done, countries done? They got
not
barbed
in
wire.
here, not today. You're
And
not
not just
coming.
not today, but they've got razor barbed wire. You come across, you're not going to be alive by the time you hit our soil. Now, why
Well,
would they say that about people that, same descendants? I mean, they probably got family, friends on both sides of the border, but they know better.
Jordan, the the same act that made Jordan, the nation of Jordan, made Israel.
Correct. Correct.
They're Palestinian.
So if anybody should take their brothers and sisters during a time of crisis and have the capacity, and here's what what America has always been like this. Oh, you think that's too much of a drain? Here, we'll send you a couple billion to help. Not that I'm in favor of that at all. You know how I feel, John. But that would be a whole lot better to send some money there to help feed them, let them keep them, than it will be to bring 1.5, 1.2 to 1.5 million unvetted, who, quite frankly, the majority of them hate our country to begin with. What do you think
Yes.
you're going to get after that? Um,
Um, Terrorism.
and so you see how I know we're getting into a very in depth conversation, but you see, I want your listeners to understand the importance of what we're talking about in this sense. That is why this election cycle is so important. That is why the determination for the future of our country is so important because right now we're headed down a path, open borders, bringing more in. We know this is not hyperbole or conjecture. We know we have tens of thousands. That's their side. We believe it to be hundreds of thousands, possibly, even a million terrorists in this country. How many did it take to bring 3,000 lives down in 9/11? What was it, 19? I believe it was. Terrorists. Imagine what 100,000 can do spread across this country who are acting concertedly together. I'm not saying they're all doing it. It's 1 o'clock, same identical time across the country, but who in sequence and in synergy go from one event to the next. Imagine what that will do to,
And that would be much more disruptive than they all
oh,
do it at the same time.
correct.
If
And
they
knowing
were to
that
do
they're
it all the
already
same,
here, John, this is what I want your listeners and your viewers to understand. This is already in play. We're not talking about, oh, this could happen, so make sure you don't. We've already allowed it to happen through the policies of the last 3 years of this administration by open borders and by doing everything they can to bring in, yes, terrorists. They've known they're terrorists. They're good and well, they know they're terrorists. When you bring them in from terrorist countries and you don't vet them, what do you think you're going to get? You're not stupid. And so they've brought them in. So why would they bring them in? Two reasons. They're bringing them in as part of the mass illegals that are bringing in, which you remember they feel like they can control and maintain power forever, which they only really need to maintain power one more time in 2024. If they're able to maintain power through illegal voting, they will change the system once they have control of the House and the Senate as well. And you'll never have another election again. That'll be the end of them. And then they're going to need some people to help get these people, get Americans in line. So let's turn some terrorists loose, is what they're looking to do. Let them create fear. Let them create concern. Let them create havoc. Let people feel a sense of hopelessness that the only way they can survive is if we empower or continue to empower this government to take care of all our needs. And then they take away our ability to defend ourselves, and we are exactly where they want us to be.
Yeah.
That's where we're
Well,
at.
I firmly believe that, and there's judges that are helping that out. So let's get to another story. A judge is using radical bias and wokeness in his decision making. Uh, a lot. So in Washington D.C., Judge Lloyd N. Nolan uh, released a recently handled or released an 18-year-old that had brandished an AR-15 uh, and that was threatening to shoot neighbors. Now, if I remember correctly, you said the story says AR-15. If I remember correctly, you said it was an AR, an AK variant.
It's an AK variant. It's an AK-40. It's a AK-47. The only difference was that they had taken the wooden buttstock and put a collapsible shoulder strap on it.
Oh wow. Okay, so this so this judge
And one
released.
thing that's important they're failing to mention is that he didn't brandish. He fired off 30 some odd rounds.
Wow. So he
Now,
fired 30
fortunately, he
rounds.
didn't hit anybody. Nobody was killed. There was, I'm sure, some property damage, but nobody was killed. So because nobody was injured, they just assumed you didn't know about that little detail.
Uh, so based on the evidence provided in that report, no one is letting personal bias affect how he does his job in court. So what do you think is going on here, and why is he letting him off the hook?
Well, let's finish the story. So 2 weeks prior, there was a 17, I believe it was. It could have been 16, 17. There's so many stories now. That white young man, male, who was parked in a school, who had a Confederate, not a 20-foot Confederate flag, a small desktop type Confederate flag in his laying on the dash, and he happened to have a sidearm in the glove compartment. I don't know the details as to how they discovered that it was there. Anyway, law enforcement was called. Of course, DC has extremely strict, you know, handgun rules. You can't even know when to put it in the glove compartment box. You're not allowed to really basically have them, period, in DC. So he was charged and brought down to the station, booked. Now, here's what typical have in that situation. You probably will spend the night in jail, but because of the fact, especially you did not weren't involved in a crime, you broke a gun law, you would be bonded out, and then of course the process would work its way through. This very judge, by the way, let's just say what it is on the air so that nobody has any misunderstanding. He's a black judge, okay? This judge said that this could be a white supremacist and a threat to the safety of the residents of DC, and was denied bond. Forget giving something ludicrous like $1 million bond. He was just denied bond, period. He is still in jail as we speak. Okay. This black young man who fired off, I think it was 28 to 30, I think 29 rounds. Uh, Bad shot, or I don't know what was his problem. Anyway, no injuries, thank God, but no injuries. But when they responded, of course, they had to apprehend him, brought him in. Now remember, he's got an AK-47. It's not been modified to be fully automatic, but that's not shooting a little 38. Okay, that's shooting a 7.62, and it do some damage. So when he comes before this same judge, he is a judge from the bench, sets him free without bond. And the reason why is because he is coming from a minority community that he has been oppressed, and he just needs guidance. He needs some direction, and we as a community owe it to him to try to rally behind and help provide direction and positive reinforcement for this young man's future. Now, first of all, I don't agree with that philosophy, but let's just say you want to take that. Then why are we not doing the same thing for the high school kid who didn't fire off a round, who didn't even wasn't even brandishing or carrying the weapon. It was in the glove compartment box. Because you saw with the little small Confederate flag, you automatically assumed he's a white supremacist who had these grandiose plans to take out Washington D.C. That is where the rub lies. That is where you're beginning to get judicial judges who are trying to forsake the law. They don't care what the law says. They're trying to use their position to determine policy and to set tone for the future.
Well, let's be clear. What's good for, as we're seeing all throughout the Democrat controlled areas, what's good for thee is not good for me.
Correct.
The law is not being equally applied. They're coming after conservatives and those that seem and look like conservatives and are taking them to task. So one of the reasons why I brought up that story is because it proves that out.
It does. And what I think is interesting, John, is I want to make sure that we do this on your show. We are not talking about that there is a good race and a bad race. We are talking about there is a truthful ideology and an evil ideology. Let me describe how the evil comes to play. Even in California now, they're talking about a reparations committee, okay? They have their recommendations. First of all, California, as you know, is not only broke, they're in the red. They're billions and billions of dollars in debt. Okay. They're going to collapse. The state's going to collapse if it can't do something. But this reparation committee recommended $15 billion to give back out into the black community for reparations. The members of the reparations committee have now decided against their own recommendation. That is not near enough. That it also needs to include opportunities, free education for them, free housing, free this, free that. Here's the problem with the ideology. When you have an evil ideology that doesn't care about your fellow man or your own actions, you're not accountable. The sky's the limit. And that is where you begin to take advantage of and begin to go after others because of your own greed. And that's what we're seeing here on the bench. He is concerned that he thinks he is defending a people when it's actually what he is defending is evil intention. And whether it's that or whether it's reparations, look, we have to base our lives on principle. That's what we've been saying on your show all along. Accountability. You make decisions, you take actions. I don't care what color you are. You're responsible for the actions that you take. Yes, there can be some extenuating circumstance. You had a bad life. I'm sorry. And maybe that should be some consideration as to how much you're punished. But you still need to take and to be held accountable for the actions that you've taken. We've lost that, John. And unless we quickly decide to get that back, the other things that we've talked about, it's all coming together in one main tsunami. That if we don't do something very quickly on, this country will go under and there's no other place to go.
Yeah, there. I had. I think I've shared this with you before. My son married a gal from Argentina, and her family have moved here legally. Gone through the process. I want to say they were in the process for over 10 years. It might have. I want to say it was close to 20. They still have a child that is not here yet, and they have a son. They have a. I said it. A son who has been here on a um, uh, education visa and is now facing the possibility that he does have to go back to Argentina and may have to start the whole process over again to be here legally. Um,
Hmm. Just take them down to the border, and let them walk across the stream and come back. They'll be set for life.
uh,
Oh, you might as well do it at the same time, John, and you won't have to work anymore either.
yeah, maybe
You
I
know?
could get one of those $10,000 credit cards, right?
Yeah, just make sure you put use my name. Tell me you use my name as your
Michael
person,
Letts. Me
and
no
I'll give
speak
you my
English.
address.
Michael Letts.
I mean, I know we're joking, but here's a tragedy in what I hear you saying. You have people that respect this country, people that respect what we stand for, our values and principles, and we do everything in our power to make sure they can't be a part. We have people that hate this country, that stand on our universities and chant death to America. And yet we will bend over backwards and then some to make sure that A, they're here, and B, to make sure they stay here, whatever it takes. We'll pay their bills, we'll pay their college, we'll pay their housing, we will do whatever it takes. John, that is not what logic people do. That is the epitome of evil. We've got leadership that supports evil principles. It's time that we as Americans stand up and say, look, this is a battle between evil and good. It's not a battle between, somebody that's pretty and somebody that's not. Doesn't make This is a very fixed battle that we are engaged in. And if you don't support good, you don't support values and principles, you are destroying life for the rest of us.
And I asked him, where do you go? If the United States falls, where do we go? And he just looked at me like deer in the headlights.
People say, "Oh, there's some great little islands." I get it. There are some great islands, but there is no island that will be able to protect you from the evil that will follow once America collapses. Whatever small little places still have some values and principles left, they'll finish those off too.
Yeah, in a heartbeat. Okay, so let's get to a few more stories, and I think this is. Let's get to the. There's two stories that surround this when it comes to our colleges. Um, a questionable document passed out during a recent college campus protest leaves cause for concern. A pro-Palestinian college protest continues to move forward across the country. One concerning document seems to push for more violent actions during those protests. Some would think the schools themselves would be against. And these documents are the same basically at each one of the schools. It's not like it's unique that specifically to that school.
Well, here's what we have discovered. Let's give your listeners, your viewers, the overall objective. You now have this pro-Palestinian is what they're calling demonstrations. The true acronym, John, is they are pro-Palestinian riots. Okay, a demonstration is people gathering together to voice an opinion on whatever the cause is. That's freedom of speech. That's one of our cherished rights. A riot is when we gather together and try to impose our will on you, and we do whatever's necessary. We tear up your property. We shut down your business. We attack police if they try to come and tell us we have to leave. We become disruptive of the law. That is what you have all over the country at this stage, in campuses all across America. And how, first of all, how is it being sustained? Well, we know this for a fact because this just didn't happen yesterday. It's been going on for the last 30, 45 days. We literally have arrested thousands across the country. What we have discovered in the arrests are a number of factors. First of all, surprisingly, a good 60, 70, 75% of those that we arrest are not actual students. They're actually paid antagonists by conglomerates funded by Soros. That's the main funding. Now you say, is it him handing the money directly? Oh no, they've got shell companies. Okay, they know how to get around the law. So you have these various shell companies that are funding, and they're not just paying these people to be disruptive. They're doing their following. They're saying, look, we want this to be a successful riot. So we're going to bring in flags, not ones you draw on a piece of paper, professional flags. We're going to produce literature that gives you a step by step guide as to how to create the most hell, the most havoc while you're out here. Don't worry about getting arrested. We're going to make sure that we come to your aid legally if something occurs. And it goes down the list. Well, here's the issue, John. If we knowingly see people that are being funded and given elements to break the law and to create lawlessness, we should not only arrest those people, but we should arrest and go after the funding sources that are the brains and the money behind the operation to begin with. And that is not happening. And we know it. We know this to be true. It's not. These are not flyers that are printed up, handwritten. Xerox a copy machine. They handed 10 copies out. These are professionally printed and done. They are specifically geared toward every location, to every state, what the different rules and regulations are. This is a professional operation. So let's apply it to what we were just talking about, our whole theme tonight about whether Iran, etc. The defense of the country. In times when America was great, let's take World War II, we were under attack. We knew what the enemy was. You liked it or not, we decided that, if you aid and abet the enemy, you're in big trouble because American lives are at stake. Yet now we are allowing countries to come in and we're allowing people to aid and abet the enemy and doing absolutely nothing about it. But actually, quite frankly, we're encouraging it. We're actually helping provide funding. Here's what's so frustrating. Do you think George Soros is giving this way of money for free? Or do you think our tax situations enable him to do what he's doing? Do you think, he's getting tax and subsidized money from Washington? He knows
Yes.
how to work the system better than we do. And we're spending our own dollars to destroy ourselves. John, these kind of things have to stop.
And this is the thing about the Democrats are so much better, so much dirtier than the Republicans. Republicans can't fund these type of organizations like the Democrats do because they get called out.
Correct. And
And
somebody would have been asked on.
in order to get whatever bill passed, they always throw this kind of crap in, and so George Soros is taken care of.
Oh, no question. People would say, well, so how does the process work? Yeah, I want to get on that. How does it happen? They take issues, uh, border crisis, instead of dealing with, well, we just shut it down so we can get across. That doesn't look. Doesn't look compassionate. So we're going to provide tax dollars for humanitarian aid. Now, here's what we do with the humanitarian aid. Oh, we don't have the ability to hand out ourselves. We're going to give it out to all these sudden overnight who will now take all this humanity and help these poor people. When you really look at it, money doesn't go to them. They go when they're not. They take $10. They give $1 to help buy a Cracker Jack box for somebody coming across the border, and $9 goes to the administration overhead, which is the Soros people on those lines. So I want people to understand that don't think that George Soros is just an endless funding source. He knows how to work the system. He knows how to put things in place so that our tax dollars are basically funding his objectives. And that's what's most tragic of all. We're
Yeah,
paying the bill to kill ourselves.
yeah, he's not coming up with all that money on his own, pulling out of his earnings that he's got through his companies. No, he's going after and getting these grants from and getting the money coming from the Democrat Party that is being sent through many bills and getting many millions of dollars for his organizations. Yeah,
And see,
and
that's
and
why,
he gets
John, when you
and he
look at
gets
the
the
budget,
power. He gets the power that comes along with it too.
yeah, sure. And that's why when you look at the budget, it takes a wheelbarrow to push it around. It's so thick because there's so many pages. If you begin to look in the intricacies of it, it's 10 and 20 million to the Sisters of Charity, 30 million to the Men of Charity. And they have no idea what those are, but the Democrats do. They understand these are profit nonprofits, LLCs, etc., that have been set up to funnel the money to make sure that we meet the objective to pay for the disorder. Oh, by the way, some of it needs to go into our coffers for reelection time. Some of it needs to go over this. And they have so corrupted the system that it's time we almost going to have to start over, John.
Well, and part of that just goes back to education. Where are we sending our kids to? Where are we sending our college kids to? Where we're sending those dollars? We need to shut those things down, and we need to stop DEI. And I've got a story about you've got a story about that that you can talk to us about. Schools, there are some schools that are starting to fight back against DEI, and for a darn good reason. One of those happens to be the UNC, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill,
Sorry.
elected to cut its funds for DI program instead of turning the funds over to the campus police. This comes after a dangerous protest took place on campus, leading to property destruction and several arrests. The $2.3 million will help bolster campus police in an effort to keep the campus safe, secure, and what's more, other college campuses appear to be following suit, believing the DEI to be a dangerous factor. Um, so, how harmful do you see these DEI programs and other woke programs along those lines in the United States to be as a whole?
Well, let me just answer it this way. Again, we see with the facts. The DEI director at a university in California has just been sent to prison, first time, for embezzling over $7 million. Took the money from the feds for DEI and used it
Embezzling $7 million.
two times, 5.5 for one, and I think it was 2.1 for the other. And the money that was supposed to be, here's the point. Here's what, well, they didn't go after because there were no um, results from DEI. Nobody can even define what DEI is, much less how do you measure the results of whether you have a successful program or not. It's the fact that this young lady was stupid enough to spend it all on personal items and trips and hotels and luxury and mansions, et cetera, directly from the money coming in from the feds to utilize it. But that's just a typical example of what's occurring across the country. Universities, in an effort to be politically correct, are creating DEI programs that nobody knows what it means. Here's what they interpret it to mean. It just simply means that if you're a minority, we don't really know what a minority is anymore, by the way. But if they think you're a minority, you get preferential treatment. You get an automatic admission, you get an automatic scholarship, you get automatic assistance, et cetera, et cetera. And they're taking our tax dollars. And you remember now, I think we did this on your show last time. We're like about 35 trillion in debt.
Yeah,
So
35.75 trillion in debt was what the debt clock that I looked at yesterday. It was
exactly.
35.75. I want to say I'm going off of memory here, and my memory's perfect, but my recall is not necessarily perfect. But if I'm going off of memory, it was $35.752 trillion. So we're almost at 35.8 trillion.
So to say that they're using our dollars technically isn't accurate because we don't have any dollars anymore. We have debt, credit card debt, basically, which if you want to call it that. And they're
Right.
taking all that and implementing these programs that are abused. Nobody can that first of all create great divide and racial tension in the country. Nobody likes to know that if you and I are equally qualified, okay, and there's one slot, but you're one color and I'm another, it automatically goes to you, regardless of whether we should square off, et cetera, because of the fact of how you were born. Nobody likes that. Nobody in America likes that. Even the black
Yeah.
community doesn't like that.
Well,
It cheapens the black community.
I'm going to tell you this: that's not even the case. I think you're giving a false narrative right there,
Tell
Mike.
me what you got.
It's they actually have lower scores. They're not quite as good, but they still get the job.
I was being nice, but you are
I
absolutely
realize
right.
that, but I'm clarifying. And we look at the Asians. They're when they're trying to get into these schools, their test scores are the highest, but they have smaller percentages for those that are applying.
Isn't it interesting? I want to catch on that one statement you just made there. I guess Asians are not minorities
Not
because
anymore.
I mean, even when they were quote unquote population wise, we decided that Asians were not that they didn't serve any purpose for us. So we're not classifying them as minorities and giving them preferential treatment. It's only the people, and you say, why would we do that? Because Asians, whether they're minorities or not, is irrelevant. They're learned people. They read. They're smart. Okay, people that read and smart can clearly see that a evil philosophy and ideology is destroying not just the country, but destroying their hopes of a future. And so they're not going to support that. They'll vote for that. Those who are led will buy whatever they're being told. And so they take those who are willing to be led and label them as minorities. And then they say, now, because you're a minority, you get all this preferential treatment. You won't get it if you don't back our philosophy and ideology. So we expect you to support us and make sure we stay in power. The problem is, here's what's occurring recently, is these minority groups are suddenly realizing that we've been backing you for generations. We're no better now than we were. We're supposed to be getting all this free stuff. We're in worse condition now than we've ever been before. So whatever it is you're offering isn't working. It's destroying our families, destroying our hopes for a future, destroying our normalcy, and they're rebelling. And now they don't know what to do.
Well, those chickens are starting to come home to roost,
They are.
fortunately, all across the country. So I just saw a CNN report. Can't remember if it was yesterday or if it was this morning. CNN poll showing that the back in 2020 that 9% of black people voted for Donald Trump last cycle. Now it's looking like 22% are going to be, as of right at this moment, if the election were held today, 22% would vote for Donald Trump. And something tells me that number is going to be significantly higher if the trends continue the way they are now.
I'm predicting at least in the 30s, possibly even the 40%. It could even break 50% because people are beginning to see. It's just what you said. Chickens come home to roost at some point in time. People cannot. Even I see it all in the black community. I've got a lot of supporters in the black community, a lot of friends. And if you ask one question, you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Absolutely not. They're beginning to see that their policies that they've been promised are fake because they are an evil philosophy. I'm just sharing something personal with you. And this is just a personal struggle on mine. I'm sharing on the air. But I told you I've got so many black supporters and black friends. Many that are in the Democratic Party who contact me. Yeah, we support everything you say. I'm running for reelection. Will you endorse me? And I said, I love you as a person, but I must make this statement. The Democratic Party is so kowtow to an evil plan that I can't support anyone with a D, even though we're good friends. And I know you may not believe it in their philosophy. But until we have people that are willing to say, I'm not either you change your philosophy, Democratic Party, back to morals and values, or I'm leaving the party, nothing's going to change. So I can't support anyone that has a D anymore. I just can't do it.
I have not heard of a single Democrat that doesn't support abortion. I don't know of a single one on the national in Congress or in Senate that doesn't support abortion. But there are Republicans that are pro-choice, and I'm going to say pro, which is pro-death,
Right.
versus that there are Republicans that are pro-choice. But you don't have any Democrats out there that are pro-life.
No, you don't. And here's what's sad. And I've preached in the black churches, and one on one, they are some of the most conservative people that you know. Yet their personal values, they can't seem to understand how they're being hoodwinked, do not equal the party's values. Oh, I'm pro life. Yeah, I believe in, we need to do something for these kids. We need, I would never kill a baby, right before it's born. But your party does. And either you're not registering the two or you're choosing to ignore it because of the fact that you said, yeah, but my party said it's going to take care of me if I just overlook that. Two things. First of all, your party's not taking care of you anymore. Second of all, when you violate your own conscience, you don't have one. So you have to decide, is your principles and values what you live by, or is it the money and greed? And if it's money and greed, then you need to stay in the party that's full of money and greed, and that's the Democratic Party.
Well, let's kind of end the discussion there. Michael Letts, I want to say thank you for joining us. And real quickly, folks, let me give out how you can find out more about Michael Letts. Michael Letts is the founder and president and CEO of Invest USA, a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities, providing thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. You can visit his website at Invest USA. That's INVEST USA.org. Michael, God bless you. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for being willing to spend time with us here on Main Street Media, Utah. We're grateful to have you here, and we look forward to having you back.
We look forward to coming to Utah, Karen and I do, and helping take care of some of our greatest American heroes, some of the first responders, and filming a little bit for Bulletproof Run and the TV show. And I know there's some great people there, and we look forward to meeting every one of them. God bless you.
Well,
Keep up the good work, John.
I hope we can get together. I
We'll
will
look
do. I
forward.
will do everything in my power to make sure that happens. So look forward to meeting you and Karen in person. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. God bless America. Take care.
All right, folks, and I'm going to say thank you, folks, to you for joining us. Those of you that are doing live, and those of you that will be watching this in the future. Have a great day. Take care.